Oh, hello there. Welcome to my US election special from sunny lockdown in Barcelona. My name's Lily and this is Small Talk. Okay, so we are seeing a divided nation in the US. Or is it actually that divided after all? We have in the Republican corner, in the red corner, we have President Donald Trump, who has given us a presidency unlike anything we've ever seen before. In the blue corner for the Democrats, we have Obama's vice president, the veteran Joe Biden. Trump's presidency has been characterized by many things. The last 4 years, we have seen a huge turnover of staff in the White House. We have had scandal after scandal after scandal. We have had those record stock market highs. We've had Supreme Court nominations fought bitterly in the Senate. We've had coronavirus. And now we have also had Black Lives Matter characterizing much of Trump's presidency. There have been some successes. He has passed tax cuts, a sort of a record-breaking tax bill in his first year. He also seemed to get on well with one of America's most notorious enemies, Kim Jong-il, for a little while. We can't forget, as in Trump's own words, he defeated ISIS. He got impeached and then kind of let off the hook by Mitch and the boys in the Senate. So yeah, an eventful 4 years indeed. Okay, on Tuesday, the 3rd of November, we have the next presidential election. Basically, the way the US system works is that they have the Congress, which is made up of two houses, House of Representatives and the Senate. And then you have the president. Now, all of these elections are happening simultaneously. They're all happening on Tuesday. Not all of the Senate is going, but enough of it to make a difference. Now, when this happened last time in 2016, you remember Hillary and Trump. Let's think back to 2016 if we have to. What happened was it was an absolute catastrophe for the Democrats. Why? Not only did they lose the presidential election and Trump became president, but they also lost the Senate elections and the House of Representatives, in that the majority in both of these chambers turned Republican, which meant that all three decision-making bodies, all three sort of major political parts of American infrastructure were red, okay? Now, 2 years ago, back in 2018, we had the US midterm elections, and I actually made my first Small Talk video for that. I shall link it. Now, in this situation, they managed to take back the House of Representatives. So right now, one of the three most important are blue and the other two are red. Now, gearing up for this election, we're going to see after Tuesday, the electoral landscape will look very different. Now, the American election has a very special feature, which I'm sure you've heard of before, and it made things a little bit tricky for Democrats last time. It's called the Electoral College. Now, what is it? You see, the way that states work and the way that votes work in the US is that people vote for the president, but actually what happens is then it's pulled together by the state and they send representatives to vote for the president. California, because it's such a huge state, and Texas, they have a lot of delegates. Smaller states have less delegates. To win the election, the president has to win the Electoral College. So that means they need a majority of 270 delegates from the states. Now, what happened in 2016 was that although Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, so she actually won the national polling, the national vote, by something like 3.2 million, because she didn't win in enough particular swing states, what happens is that the winner takes all in those states and they vote completely for the candidate that won the highest proportion. And this is why it's very important for elections to be run on these swing states. If a state like Oklahoma is red and Republican forever, and a state like California is blue and Democrat forever, they get a lot less noticed in the election. You start seeing the same names always coming up. Florida is always such an important state because whichever way it goes often helps the final count and pushes the president over, or pushes the candidate over the line so that they can become president. Okay, let's take a look at some of the key issues defining this campaign and this election. So Trump started the year definitely framing his campaign as about the economy. And obviously this has been shot to pieces by our current situation. You know, we're living in a global pandemic, something that has really scuppered Trump's re-election chances. I think if you had asked me back in January who was going to win the election, I would say Trump. It's not even a point looking at it. But things have changed so dramatically just this year that he could have lost it through his fingers in the last few months. I think there's been a real criticism of the Democrats that they have built so much of their identity in their campaigns on being anti-Trump. Oh, let's get Trump out of the office, or oh, this is just such an abomination on our civilized country. Okay, fair enough. Many people, I'm sure, agree with them, and that probably does chime. But also, what are you offering? What is the productivity of this? What is the positivity? What is the alternative? Now, I'm saying that's at the beginning of the year. Things have changed since then. It's all COVID, 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 as Trump himself says. Now, it's really harming him that he still seems to sort of frame it as something that's in the way, a distraction. I think that there's been a tipping point in the US, which you could probably get away with that up until April, but it's probably touched a few too many people's lives personally and individually. So if you're not taking this seriously anymore as the president, I'm sure that that really rubs people up the wrong way, and it seems to have affected some of his core demographic, which I'll come to in a moment. So, you know, we see this sort of like clear choice to mask or not to mask, you know, with Biden wearing his mask and Trump not wearing his mask. Let's not forget that although he recovered very quickly and, you know, has really kind of demonstrated his strength in that way, no one, unfortunately, likes an ill president. You know, it's something that is frowned upon and it affects voters in quite a subconscious way. And Biden has been transformed into this sort of steady pair of hands, almost like a caretaker president. Before you can do something kind of big and bold again in the future, they need to kind of unity and get through this. I think that more people in the US are calling for unity than's realised. Trump's not very good at the unity pitch. You know, he really needs to rile up the base, and he always needs to frame an other. His Sleepy Joe sort of criticism, or the name that he calls Joe Biden, hasn't really stuck either. Another key issue, and again linked to unity, is the pain and suffering and division going on in American cities. And obviously this has been erupted through the Black Lives Matter protests. You know, police brutality is actually, there's quite a lot of consensus in the US around this issue. So I'll talk briefly about it. You know, Trump constantly frames himself as the law and order president. And he even does so in capital letters on Twitter. You know, just a tweet, law and order, is apparently supposed to convey enough times that he's, you know, tough on crime and he's the big, you know, sheriff's best friend or something. Interestingly, what has happened in the US is that polling suggests that more people are united around Black Lives Matter and see it as a valid movement and something that is, you know, to have empathy for, then they are sort of turned on by Biden as a candidate. So actually Black Lives Matter is more popular than Biden. So if you are attacking Black Lives Matter and then lumping it in with Biden as if that's part of something that you would destroy or be very hard on, that actually is not working. The other thing is that people trust Biden more with crime. So even though Trump is trying to position himself as law and order, Biden did a very, very, very good move in promoting Kamala Harris as his vice presidential candidate. She's basically the top cop in the country. So whilst being sympathetic to protesters, he's also bolstered his law and order credentials. Okay, so what are some interesting points to look out for? So I talked about swing states. These are the most interesting states to watch for election results and to see the analysis preceding and after the election. So we have Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, North Carolina, and even Arizona, and even Texas. Now, most of these look like they are heading Biden's way, but some of them are too close to call, and that too close to call is worrying Democrats. For example, talking about 2016 again, when it came to Florida, Trump beat Hillary by 2% in Florida. That's how close it was, by 2%, and he took all of the electoral college votes for that state, pushing him over the finishing line. So this is how important swing states are. Now, Texas as well is up into play. Although it probably won't go Democrat this year, Texas is becoming a really interesting state to look at, because this is somewhere where you can see demographics changing the political makeup of some of these traditionally blue or red states. Some of these key demographics for Trump are starting to desert him, and he's actually been explicit about it. He is aware, for example, white suburban women who kind of helped drive him to victory in 2016, they are abandoning him. Another one is white Catholics, and this is also partly because Biden is one of the few Catholics who's going to become president. They're usually Protestant. And, these are very, very interesting. Of course, as well, older voters, pensioners, the pandemic directly affects them, and Trump seems to be playing fast and loose with their lives. This means that people who are traditionally seen as kind of bankable Republican votes are crossing over. Biden as well, no one can confuse him for being on the left or sort of socialist. He's as center as it comes, and is probably pretty at home with some of the Republican senators as well. That's the way American politics works. There is this enmesh in the centers of the parties. It's not like we have a clear-cut left and right. The Democratic Party would struggle to be called left in European terms anyway. But we hear a lot about voter suppression tactics. It's incredibly disappointing that in one of the most advanced democracies in the world, that this is something that is taken as desirable by those in power. Talking about Biden, the Democrats, like I said, they're not that enthusiastic around him. Actually, some of the never Trump Republicans, the people who are Republican who could never vote Trump, are more enthusiastic about Biden than traditional Democrat voters. So, are they really riding with Biden? The apathetic Democratic vote, maybe they'll stay home. Okay, the final major point I want to make before talking about some of my predictions is, how does this relate to the UK? Okay, and how does it relate to big old Brexit? Well, it's very, very interesting. The reason why in the UK we have a little bit of like a lull in the government talking about their big talk to the EU is because they are a bit scared. Things are all to play for right now. And actually, it's seen that Johnson will wait to make a decision on no deal Brexit until receiving the results of the presidential election. Depending whether it's Biden or Trump, Johnson will act differently. Reminds me of a few other of his main decisions. If Trump wins, Boris will go very boldly to Europe and say, there's your no deal. We're going our brave new way into the new world, straight into the arms of his natural ally, and the special relationship is ongoing and preserved forever. But things will be a little bit different if Biden wins. So first things first, Biden will be prioritizing a close relationship with the EU. He needs to fix all of the damage that Trump has done to that relationship in the previous 4 years. He'll be trying to get the United States more natural allies back into the fold, reassuring Merkel of Germany and Macron of France. And what are they embroiled in? Brexit negotiations. So he's hardly going to be prioritizing the UK relationship right now when the much bigger and more strategic relationship with the EU needs attention. Not only that, but with all of the sort of hard Brexit, no deal Brexit and the repercussions that has for Northern Ireland, Joe Biden is pretty angry at the British and at Johnson's government for what he sees kind of playing fast and loose and being irresponsible with the Good Friday Agreement. Now, Biden's ancestors are Irish, so he's very proud of his Irish Catholic heritage. So again, he is close to Ireland, not the UK. And finally, he is not really, his team is not really going to forget many of these disparaging comments that Johnson has made about Obama in the past. This was Obama's running mate and vice president for 8 years. And Johnson, unfortunately, ever clumsy with his words, seems to have alienated this relationship before it's even started. Now, obviously, things are not always going to be personal. The US-UK relationship is geostrategic and is very, very politically important. So, of course, there will be cooperation. But let's not kind of be under the false assumption that we're going to be at the front of the queue like we often imagine that we will be. Okay, so what do I actually think will happen? What are my predictions about this? Well, it is difficult. So I would say that the polls mathematically seem to be against Trump. For example, in national polls, so that's across the national vote, he is behind by about 10 points. But also in the battleground, in the key swing states, he also seems to be behind. So I think in some of these battleground states, it's too close to call. But it does look like, even if I saw someone say the other day that even if we took into account the margin of error or how wrong it was in 2016, and we accounted for that in today, Trump would still lose. So things don't look great for him. Now, as always, there seems to be a disconnect between the reality and President Trump's own idea of what's happening and what's really happening electorally. Then again, it has been reported that behind closed doors, he's told the Senate and senators that many of them will lose their seats and that, the Republicans are expecting a bloodbath. Now, there are various things that could stop that happening. I think that really democratically the way that the election should work looks like Biden would win. But this election is special. It's unlike no other. We've had record-breaking early voting. We've had record-breaking mail-in voting. With coronavirus, voting in person becomes so much more complicated. So it seems like turnout is going to be high amongst some key demographics. Is this going for Democrats? Is it going for Republicans? And what will Trump do on the day with all of the information? Now, I know that we've always said that after seeing his crazy campaign in 2016, that he would temper down and the presidency would change him. Actually, 4 years later, we can see that it hasn't. But I don't think that this time there's any there's no reassurance that he would oversee a peaceful transition of power, and that's alarming. And I'm not really an alarmist. I never exaggerate on this channel, but it's for the first time that I think that the US has fallen into some level of tyranny if this president does not cede power and accept the result. How would he do that? He will talk about how there's been voter fraud, which he's already been saying loads. It's basically disproven, it's basically negligent, but he ramps it up all the time. He'll try to send it to the courts. He may stay in his position citing stability. Republicans are already assembling legal teams to try to block extended counting, because obviously if it's not counted on election night, these are huge populations. It may run over by 3 days, 9 days before the result is announced. Republicans are trying to block that happening, saying the winner on the night is the winner. So this is going to be extremely interesting. We can also see that Trump's running mate, Vice President Mike Pence, has all but disappeared. Now, his office does have coronavirus, but I think that in the last few days of a campaign, when Biden and Obama are kind of storming around the country, Harris too, Trump is going solo and having to bring over some cronies from the UK like Nigel Farage. I think the fact that Pence isn't by his side or isn't going around actually says a lot more about what is Pence's heart in it. Does he want to be the final face looking at a campaign going down? This could tell us something. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I do think that it's going Biden's way, but this is an election unlike any other. We have COVID complicating things. We have Trump sort of, pushing the American political system to its limits. So this could go many ways, but I do think that it should be a Biden victory, the way things are looking now. Then again, voter turnout. I'm going to keep saying then again. So I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this today, please give me a like. It really, really helps. Please subscribe. I'd love to make more videos for more people, and maybe catch you on a live session on election night. If you're interested, let me know in the comments. Thanks so much. Bye.